Can you believe Demon Souls is 15 years old? I look back fondly on my first memories of raiding the Balatarian Palace, cowering in fear behind my trusty great shield, poking with a lance only when I couldn't use archery from afar. Newbie fear is fleeting. All these years later, dozens of playthroughs of Demon Souls to Bloodborne, to Sekiro, to Elden Ring has forged many of us into getting godlike at these games. Or so you would think. While there's little doubt knowledge and experience are a boon, I'm curious just how well my skills will measure up against FromSoft's now 7 games in the Souls series all these years later. We'll see whose challenge stands the test of time in this 7-part series. For the first time, I'll be ranking each game's boss difficulty from my sole perspective, one of a veteran who is revisiting with fond nostalgia, and a theoretical advantage. We'll cap it all off with my biggest ranking ever, a single video sorting the boss quality of Demon Souls, the Dark Souls trilogy, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring into a single list. It all starts today with where the series began. Without further ado, here are the Demon Souls bosses ranked from easiest to hardest. Number 18, True King Allant. Where better to start than by pointing down at the addled remains of Balataria's king. This broiled frog croaks before he can so much as sneeze. Okay, that's not entirely true. He can hoist himself up and flop on you with the ferocity of an overstuffed pillow. That's it. If you're wondering how you could possibly withstand such a devastating onslaught, there's only one answer necessary. And no, it's not dodging, it's not blocking, it's good old grass. Why bother putting an effort when you can channel your inner goat? You can out-heal the paltry damage to a nigh infinite degree. How? By being a dispensary with stocks greater than the entire city of Denver. Crescent moon, half moon, late moon, full moon, new moon, dark moon. And I'm not reciting a Twilight knockoff series, these are many variants of on-demand healing you carry in your magic pockets at any time. The latter half of that list are full heals, assuming you aren't inflating your HP to Elden Ring levels. It's free real estate. Now why hammer in this point so hard against the irradiated Toad King? Because it's important context for the rest of the list. Keep in mind as we continue that anytime you're in danger, as long as you have more than a second, you can heal to full at any time. It'll take quite a boss to overcome that big of an advantage. And like Allant's failure to master the soul arts to save his kingdom, he can barely measure up higher on the difficulty charts than this ankle-deep water he's drowning in. Number 17, Adjudicator. It's a testament to what a nothing burger True King is that Adjudicator beat out anything at all. If you're hot off Shadow of the Erdtree, you are going to laugh when you see how slow the windup is on Adjudicator's swings. The footage speaks for itself. Like a moon orbiting a planet, you can play Ring Around the Adjudi without a hint of danger. This gives you eons to slap the wounds and roast the golden turkey. The more I think about it, it may as well be a coin toss for who gets the easiest honors. In fact, why not make it a triple? Number 16, Fool's Idol. Pinwheel's grandma descends to claim her stake for Demon Souls' biggest pushover. She's helpless once you get in close. Her only recourse is teleporting away, creating clones, and showering you with magic while you attempt to reclose the gap. Doing so can be tricky thanks to shock traps scattered throughout the arena. And if you didn't explore the level thoroughly enough beforehand to kill her worshiper above, she'll respawn forever. Like many of FromSoft's puzzles, however, once the solution is found, the actual execution is far too easy. While she gets credit for her tricks, you'll never forget to kill her crony after your first time. As for the misdirection mid-combat, it's worthless if you're using one of the many broken range tools Demon Souls offers. Better yet, Demon Souls makes it so easy to get a fully upgraded weapon within a few hours of spawning. Just farm one up and crush her before she can do a thing. I'll give her the slight edge for minor variability and difficulty depending on when you face her, but with the right planning, she's every bit as easy as our other 2 basement dwellers. Number 15, Old Monk. The OG summoner. This chair-obsessed husk wraps a gargantuan robe funnel on unwitting phantoms to pilot their body against you. This can be a player, but thanks to Demon Souls' headache-inducing tendency system, I typically play the game offline. In that case, you get a cooked NPC that does meager claw attacks, soul arrows, and periodically homing soul arrows autocast by the robes. The mind flayers in the hallway are harder to deal with than this, as anyone who's tried to don the giant cone and lost their host before they entered the fog will know all too well. Honestly, you'll have a tougher time navigating the minefield of chairs than you will dealing with the boss. Now, if you want my opinion on a player version, we go from an F grade to a big question mark. How good the player is, whether or not they choose to heal, and how ruthless they are will vary that experience wildly. The NPC version shows the Old Monk needs that player ingenuity to amount to anything. Number 14, Phalanx. The Phalanx experience differs greatly with a little know-how. The whole level teases that the dregs of humanity were fending off demons with fire. You're rewarded with plenty of turpentine and firebombs with thorough exploration of 1-1. This allows you to easily cull the majority of Phalanx's hoplite demons with a handful of firebombs and a few swings of your blade. Once you run out of the bombs, just light your weapon up and singeing sweep your way through the remains. The only threat in this fight at all are the numbers, something the strategy makes short work of. It's easy to execute, consistent, and only requires you to be diligent in picking up these resources. As long as you can dodge a few spears or heal through them with the disgusting bounty Agrasis Palace holds, you're golden. Phalanx herself has no offense to offer. She can only shirk away in fear as you burn her out of existence. Just so that's clear, the 5th easiest boss in the game is one that doesn't attack. Only has mobs that do the work for it in a bunch formation that makes them perfect for firebombing. The absolute state of Demon Souls boss difficulty. Number 13, Leechmonger. I hope you got some turpentine left because it's gonna come in handy here. Leechmonger's gimmick is coating you with its namesake to siphon health away from you. Its ability to do this effectively depends on being able to withstand your damage enough for it to matter. And as you can see, with my axe ablaze, fat chance. Chalk this one up more so to routing knowledge of the game than anything else. I know all too well how annoying the Valley of Defilement can be. For a -1 stage, it has some of the highest enemy scaling, encouraging you to leave it for later. Since I didn't require anything from 5.2 or 5.3, I had no incentive to kill Leechmonger before I had a fully upgraded weapon, with flames ready to serve up seared bloodsuckers. There's not much to say about its moves at all. Take the leeches, take a beating. It doesn't matter. Tank and spank with grass and smacking that ass. Number 12, Maiden Astraea. Garl Vinland's main squeeze is a fantastic story boss that is designed to provide resistance in other ways than difficulty. Unfortunately, we aren't measuring the emotional toll of an encounter today. When it comes to mechanical difficulty, it's hard to vouch for a boss that can be killed from afar with arrows, as long as you're spec'd into it enough to outpace her healing, or straight up surrenders if you defeat Garl Vinland. You can actually fight her, which will have her do God's wrath while you're dealing with the plague, but as is becoming all too common, it's easy to out-heal with grass. It makes defeating Vinland, if you go this route, the only real combat encounter. He takes an admirable strategic position to block your advantage. What he didn't know is I was forged in the International House of Pancakes. All it takes is breaking his stance once and it's GG. While there's enough resistance in this encounter to soar mildly above the cakewalks thus far, we're still well in the realm of Weenie Hut Jr. Number 11, Old Hero. This blind warrior is the greatest victim of Demon Souls' most powerful accessory, the Thief Ring. With easy access provided in the first level from Astrava's platform, you can cruise through the entire game, diminishing enemy aggro range by leaps and bounds. It shines in a lot of situations, but it feels like it was made for the Old Hero, where his mechanic designed around listening for player movements is completely broken by it. All you have to do is waltz around until he does a random scripted attack that whiffs, then sprint up and punish. Run away after overstaying your welcome, and you won't be punished in the slightest thanks to your broken ring. It's a shame there isn't more to this because he does have great visual design, an ominous presence, and some cool attacks. In the off chance you do get hit by one, it's unlikely to be a one-shot, so what do? Pocket grass. As long as you're patient and bring the right tools for the job, Old Hero does little to live up to his legend. Number 10, Storm King. Taking a slight step up, Storm King puts out massive damage with its crystal spikes, but can be dangerous in tandem with his minions. However, unless you get the perfect storm of them hitting all at once, you can easily out-heal any mistakes with grass in the very large downtime between attacks. This is given by design to allow the player a fair chance to run the sky with the Storm Ruler. Between slicing skyward, duck behind cover, and cull the minions to give you cleaner shots at the king himself. It's a simple loop that is normalized for all players to execute with the given weapon, the first on the list that has a slight whiff of danger. Number 9, Tower Knight. Tower Knight, my beloved, I'm sad to see how far you've fallen. Get it? Dial your life alerts, baby stumbled behind his great shield and can't get up. I remember this being significantly more difficult. Perhaps it's because I used to come here earlier, but with no real reason to bother until you've killed an archdemon. Coming here with a fully upgraded weapon makes this more like a cardboard box jester. I didn't even bother killing the archers. Bob and weave behind his attacks to give Adjudicator a run for its money and chomp the ankles 2 to 3 times. Smash his head like a pumpkin and call it a day. I'm being hyperbolic with the attack speed. It's not unreasonable to take a few licks from him or the archers if you choose not to kill them, but go grazing your way through your pockets solves that problem yet again. The error margin would increase with weaker stats, and I do recognize you have to kill some bosses before getting a fully upgraded weapon, but the fundamentals remain unchanged regardless of when you take him on. His size and shield can't make up for subpar speed, letting you run circles around him to an easy victory. Number 8, Vanguard. The difficulty here is less from complex mechanics and tight dodge windows. No, Vanguard is rather simple to deal with. Strafe along the left hip to the booty. Doing so without lock-on lets you evade most hits and immediately counter with damage. Being directly behind often leads to the ground pound, allowing you to back off and quickly run back in for a lot more damage. Sometimes this loops, if not, continue hugging the hip to the behind until you win. The reason Vanguard makes it this high is not because this is difficult to execute moment to moment, it's that the tutorial setting without the ability to level ensures you're going to be going in with a weak build and limited healing. With a vast health pool and high damage relative to your low HP, the error margin increases quite a bit. This is made more dramatic when you consider you only get a single attempt to seize victory. If you die, you're sent to the Nexus. The only way to beat him from there is in the overworld of 4-1 in a mini-boss encounter. If he was a repeatable boss behind standard fog, he'd likely find himself a few spots lower. As it stands, despite winning more often than not, I can't deny every encounter with Vanguard in the tutorial has some tension the others thus far lack. Number 7, Dirty Colossus. This is basically Vanguard with some trickier dodge timings and a more potent punch. The same principles apply. Do your best to get behind him and smack away, while taking our fiery lessons from Leechmonger to heart and burning him for extra damage. Where things get messy are the greater radius of the swings, the respectable endgame damage, and the fly mechanics. If you get hit by the swarms he shoots at you, HP will quickly begin draining. You'll have to contend with this while still dodging the melee attacks, making things spiral quickly. To remove the flies, you can use torches in the arena to burn them off, but putting yourself at range will subject you to more fly attacks. Of course, you could just dodge every one of these attacks and never have to deal with it. That's what I did. The moves inflicting them are very well telegraphed and easy to evade, assuming you don't go full unga bunga. However, I felt the margin of error here was the greatest yet, with tighter dodge timing windows and greater punishment for failing to meet them. That said, we're still well below what I would consider the franchise average for difficulty. Number 6, Armored Spider. This is a test of patience and rhythm. If you can dodge the delayed swipes and slams, then dole out a not too greedy amount of attacks, or heals in the generous downtime between, the majority of the fight will be a breeze. In the remainder, you'll be forced down the tunnel, where you'll have to fight through fireballs and web shooters to make it back. If your dodges are on point, you'll quickly return unscathed. If you're hit, especially by the web shooters, it can put you in a sticky situation. The webbing slows your movements to a crawl, making your trek back more arduous. Honestly, this boss became way easier in Remake. The tells are far more clear, making dodge timing feel more forgiving. It only takes a few rounds of runbacks to slay the spider, and that was with an early game weapon. If you came here later, it would be far easier to squish. Giving credit to the runback portion and odd delays on melee, there's an air of difficulty a tiny cut above the rabble thus far. Number 5, Penetrator. Now we are finally reaching right around the average level of boss difficulty for Soulsborne Ekiro Ring. Really rolls off the tongue, huh? Kinda like Bior of the Twin Fangs barreling into my mono-y-mono boss battle. Not on my watch, buddy. I was worried he was gonna turn on me Abyss Watcher style, only to see Penetrator put his name into action and then send him into orbit. Turning his skewer to me, the fight begins in earnest. Penetrator's strengths are good range and moderate to high damage that makes up for his low end attack speed. This feels like a rough alpha of what bosses like Artorias, or Alone, or Soul of Cinder would become. A night fight centered around watching his posture, the tilt of the blade, and responding in turn. Every tell is very well distinguished, made easier by a rather shallow move pool. It's fun to roll with the punches and penetrate the Penetrator, as vanilla as he may be in the shadow of his successors. Number 4, Maneaters. Pinwheel's grandma, Artorias' grandpa, and now the patriarch of gargoyles. Demon Souls had a lot of bold ideas that were later refined. Dark Souls improved upon Maneaters in one distinct way. You had a heck of a lot more space to fight on that roof than this precarious bridge. If your idea of fun is fighting a duo who love knockback attacks over a death pit on a shoestring bridge, then you masochists will be right at home. The Maneaters themselves have a moveset no more difficult than the majority of our bottom dwellers. It's made tough by the blowback on such a thin arena. You have to ensure you have enough clearance behind you at all times. Doing so lessens the number of available openings you can seize, which is vital in this fight, as rushing down the first Maneater before the second spawns reduces the potential for ganking to spike the difficulty. Even with your best performance, you can get unlucky, with them soaring out of your range for no reason whatsoever. I cannot fathom why FromSoft programmed them to Superman halfway across the arena periodically, but get used to it. It's even worse if you wear the Broken Thief's Ring. They can actually lose track of you during this and get stuck in a loop of landing and flying over and over. There's even a small chance it'll disappear entirely, soft-locking you. The only advantage you can bring to the table are strong tools. Since I left Fool's Idol until my build was complete, the strength of my axe made short work of the first Maneater before the second even appeared. Even then, I took my fair share of blows and agonized as the Maneater abandoned our duel for greater heights. Despite reaching for the stars, the many flaws in Maneater's design is the only thing that adds difficulty, a legacy I think we'd all rather forget. Number 3, False King Alon. I've mentioned Rhythm a few times today. Holy left 2 feet. I was absolutely embarrassed by the False King. Dude gave me the soul level suck not once, but twice, hit me with his stupidly long wind-up AoE you have no business not dodging, left me with thousands of cuts from wind and sword both, and yet it didn't matter. Say it with me, pocket grass. I couldn't believe I managed to out-heal my favorite for the number 1 spot going in. Realistically, any of these moments could have spelled my doom if I hadn't been precise about ham-fisting grass down my gullet. Yet the fact it's possible to level HP into the 30s and not only survive an ass whooping, but come out on top, maybe he's not all he's cracked up to be. It feels kinda lame to make it as simple as I chugged grass and blindly Paul Bunyaned my way to victory, but that's what happened. I used my knowledge of unbalanced healing, the length of grass-eating animations, and chose a strong physical weapon with his resistance to magic in mind. I even took advantage of Cursed Weapon, a spell that gives 50% bonus damage at the cost of 1% HP per second, that is, unless you use the Talisman of Beasts, a dual faith intelligence catalyst that breaks when you only have one of those 2 required stats, and instead only takes a single HP per second. The fact that preparation like this can outshine the strength, frequency, and closing speed of Alon should echo more than ever how unbalanced Demon Souls is in the player's favor. Don't even get me started on cheesy stuff like using Poison Cloud in the Thief's Ring. It allows him to de-aggro, and then you can pollute his arena for an easy kill if you can wait the 20 minutes. Or use Firestorm to nuke him, Dragon Bone Smasher to chunk him.
And my axe.
There are endless ways to make short work of the False King. He packs enough of a punch to put the player at greater risk than anything before him, but this old man is still far behind the titans of difficulty in the rest of the series. Number 2, Flamelurker. The only boss that can rise to the difficulty occasion for traditional combat in Demon Souls is this spicy brawler. Like the Maneaters, Flamelurker is hard to predict. His AI gets a little, lost at times. What do you see, boy? What do you see? Is it me getting ass blasted by fiery after effects? Because you'll be seeing that a whole lot. Dodging the blows themselves isn't too troubling. It's the need to be aware of your positioning and roll timing to ensure you don't get caught by the blast. If you manage to get hit by both, they can near one-shot in the early game. This gets tougher to manage when you consider inconsistent follow-up attacks, hunched posture that magnetizes his crotch and gets you stuck, and stun lock that wears off whenever he feels like snapping out of it. His offbeat aggression patterns make his generous downtime unnerving, never being sure if he'll keep hopping away or suddenly leap in to clobber you. This makes sprinting and strafing your biggest friends here. Baiting attacks and countering without dodging makes the animation lock on attacks more forgiving, allowing you to roll and respond if he breaks stun or does an unexpected follow-up. Even after grabbing the Blessed Mace early to exploit his magic weakness, it took quite a few hits to down him. Granted, it should be taken into account there's no reason to fight him as early as I did, unless you need to kill an archdemon early or want the Dragon Bone Smasher. If you come here later with a powerful magic build or strong enough melee, you could make much faster work of him. The quicker you do, the less likely you'll be caught out by his explosive blows. Even so, Flamelurker does the best job of maintaining his difficulty throughout the entirety of your playthrough. That is, with the exception of my choice for the number 1 spot. In an upset I hope won't be too controversial, the unorthodox champion of Demon Souls boss difficulty is Dragon God. Please, bear with me. If there's any tale I'd like to rewrite, it's that of this draconic behemoth. The poster child for much of the promotional material, there was a lot of excitement built up for the inevitable encounter. While I respect how difficult it would have been to create a traditional fight with technical limitations, there had to be a better compromise than what we got. Somehow, I'm to believe the miners of Stonefang Tunnel managed to trap the Dragon God within their molten cave. Irate from what is surely disbelief, he attacks you on sight. You'll have to use obstructions to avoid his gaze while creeping toward 2 ballistas that spell his doom. That's right, it's a stealth fight. Your real opponents are the broken pillars to smash. Yay! Bulldozing your way to 2 ballistas while making use of cover sounds simple, right? Of course it does. Problem lies in the punishment for failure. If you're spotted, say goodnight. You can try to run away, block, dodge, do whatever you want, it does not matter. If his fists even graze you, instant one-shot. In the rare chance you do survive, they have a persistent hitbox to ensure that mistake is rectified. Lovely. Your margin for error here is void. Play perfect or perish. There's a lot of hullabaloo online about the different directions he looks mattering, but as far as I can tell, the moment you leave cover, you have less than a second before he notices you. Then about a second to get back in cover before he enrages. With how long it takes to sprint to each pillar, attack, and return, your actual error margin here is determined by perfect movement and measurement of the length of your attack animation. Despite adequate knowledge of this going in, unlike every other boss on today's list, it amounted to squat. He killed me half a dozen times simply testing the length of different attack animations to see what would work. Even once I figured out viable timing, it was still so razor thin, I died more times here than the entire rest of the list getting the W. And if you're gonna suggest the Dragon Bone Smasher that's meant to normalize the experience, counterpoint. It's only available in pure white world tendency, which will be unavailable to anyone who doesn't understand the obtuse system. While I do understand it, even with it, the animations were so long it felt barely worth the trouble. Even after pinning him to the ground, his dying breaths chunked me for nearly my entire HP bar. It might seem silly to rank a puzzle boss with a supposed guaranteed solution as the hardest boss in the game, but the inconsistency and tight timing of breaking the pillars makes this a trial in frustration regardless of your preparation. Unlike other harder encounters like False King and Flamelurker that build off years of waging traditional Souls combat, Dragon God's mechanics are one of a kind. The only practice for slaying him is to stealth through the ancient Dragon Man himself. Thank God for that. Leave this in the lava dumpster where it belongs. I'll be honest though, it didn't surprise me upon my revisit that design jank went out for difficulty. Boss design in Demon Souls was highly experimental, and despite it amounting to by far the easiest to defeat roster in the series by a huge margin, I adore how creative FromSoft was in their first foray. Sure, it resulted in some pain, but there was plenty to gain in unique experiences and building blocks for the future. I look forward to sharing more of my thoughts on that when we stack up their quality against the rest of the series. Thank you for watching today. Next time, we're going to be breaking out of the Undead Asylum and sweeping through the wonders of Lordran.